Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Yeah, Kevin, how are you, buddy?
Oh, living the dream. You doing, Tim?
I'm hanging in there, man. So it's like I don't know. I should break the news right now? Like I am an ordained minister.
Whoa,
If you guys
big
need
news.
someone to officiate a wedding and spread the Church of Liberty throughout this land,
There you
I
go.
mean,
Is that the name now?
I don't know. That's maybe we'll kick it around a little bit as the show progresses. I think.
We'll see. But yeah, no, big news, folks. So if you were looking for that opportunity, you're like, who's going to get me hitched? That Tim could be your guy. He can give on the government's behalf, the ceremony.
Yeah.
To which is
I
did.
I'm going to Chat GPT for some assistance.
Oh, did you?
I'm gonna. I haven't yet.
Well, yeah, it can help you with your remarks and stuff too. As long as you don't sound too robotic, should be good.
Well, I'm a trained broadcast. I'm a broadcast professional, Kevin. I changed my Twitter name to the Freedom Variant Broadcast Journalist just so that people know exactly who they're dealing with.
Well, if it's Twitter official, I mean, did you get yourself blue checked?
No, I'm not ready for that kind of responsibility. $8 a month I'd have to cancel Netflix. Like life is choices for me, and I mean, I could get 2 blue checks for what I pay for Netflix, but still, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it.
Yeah. But so anyway, we're gonna jump into the show. And a couple things we're going to talk about: birth rates falling in New York State, specifically as we go. But and then it's a thing kind of everywhere. And there's some folks who want to implement, say, pro-natalist policies. They want people to have babies. And talk about why and what they're doing and how it could maybe go wrong. I know a federal government scheme going wrong. Shocking.
Yeah. Well, if we continue on the track of our current birth rates, another government scheme could go decidedly wrong. So we have to talk about it and perhaps save the world by encouraging people to reproduce.
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll talk about all that. We're going to go live in just a few seconds. But of course, if you have comments, make sure you leave them. We see a few coming in already. Thanks for the comments already, folks. John, Patricia, Shelley, we see you. But we're going to jump into the show.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. How are you, brother?
Oh, living the dream, Tim, living the dream. How about you?
Oh, about the same. I was poking around the local Oneonta Daily Star website, and occasionally I run across a story there that may in fact bear some real potential importance to our society, and that is, and look, dear Otsego County, guess what? You win for having the lowest birth rate in New York State. So but there's a bigger issue. This isn't just Otsego County. This is a statewide problem. And look, so we'll try to get into all of it, but the number one thing is our replacement population birth rate would be about 2.1 children per family unit. Okay, so we're at like 1.7, and it looks like we're declining. Like there was a percent
1.6 across the U.S.
Yeah,
1.66.
We were supposedly, according to the article I read, at 1.7. We were below the national average. Am I Perhaps we have
Yeah,
conflicting.
well, that was from the Reason article I read. So 1.6 was nationwide. It was, let's see, New York State dropped from 1.85 to 1.55 in 2021.
Okay, well,
That's what it
I'm
is.
going to go with that. The
That's the
local,
Daily Star.
yeah, the local Daily Star maybe got it wrong. I don't know.
No, that's right. It's so it is below what the U.S. average is at 1.66.
Okay.
I don't know why 1.71 here, 1.66, but we'll go with that. New York State 1.55. The point is there were like actually fewer babies born in New York State in 2021 than in 2011. 241,312 babies, 210,742 in 2021, 13% decline, actual decline going on there. 2021 when my son was born, of course, and we added that number. But let's talk let's talk about whether or not what's going on here. Is this a concern? Does it matter? And I could already see folks like, was this a drop from teen pregnancy rates dropping from Patricia, or is it an abortion thing in New York State?
I'm going to tell you that at least a part of it is of course the taxation situation and the lack of economic opportunity in New York State. The fact that we live in a oppressive state where young people who are starting their lives want to have the most amount of freedom, they want low taxes, and they want economic opportunity. They want to be able to afford their lives.
Yeah.
And New York does not look like that to me. And if it doesn't look like that to me at 56 years old, I can't imagine what it looks like to a 30-year-old. And guys, again, I've already sent a child out into the world who's a lawyer who is not going to come back to New York State. There's no way. My next two children, one's going to be a junior next year in college. She may end up in New York. Her area of interest suits a New York vibe pretty well. But my youngest is already eyeballing going to college out of state. So I'm just saying, it's like there are things that we should fix. There's issues that we should attack, and we're not attacking them. And a declining birth rate is actually a real issue because all sorts of government Ponzi schemes are on the chopping block.
And we'll talk about that. But before we move on to that, because I want to add some kind of anecdotal stuff, but kind of related to what you're saying. Why might this be happening specifically in New York, but also everywhere, right? Part of it's like, so like our decision, like when do we have kids, was partly is like financially motivated, right? There's kind of a double two-edged sword going here, right? There's on the one hand, maybe we're acting responsibly by waiting until we're more financially stable to have kids than previous generations were, right? Like you can look at it that way, you can see it positive that people are making informed choices about when and how they want to have kids until they're able to provide good opportunities for them without destabilizing themselves any more than having a kid in any situation does, right? But in New York State in particular, right, like with higher taxes, with challenges in the job market, with all sorts of stuff going on, with high home prices in many areas in New York State, Rochester being relatively low, but going up very quickly. But all these things where you're like, okay, well, I want to be able to have a house before we have kids, right? Can you afford a house? Are you in a stable job? Are homes affordable in my area? Are we making enough money to be able to afford a $300,000 house, which is what it looks like in the suburbs nowadays in Rochester, which has gone up a lot over the last several years, because that's what many people want to do. I don't want to live in the city. I don't want to be in an apartment when we're having kids. I want to buy a house. And so if you don't feel financially stable, which again, I had already owned a house for several years, but like a lot of people don't, maybe just wait. You say, we'll put it off a little bit longer. We'll put it off a little bit more. And that's what so many people are doing nowadays. And now, so they're having, instead of 3-4 kids with some families, they're having fewer kids, they're having 1 or 2, and maybe they're waiting a little bit longer. And it does say something about that in the article too, where like the average age that people were having children went from 28.9, and it went up from 27.2.
Right.
So gone up over a year and a half on average. And that's, I didn't have a son till I was 30,
Yeah.
but yeah, lots of folks are making that. Again, the college educated folks, the people who were, maybe paranoid about getting pregnant for a long time. Now sudden, they were just waiting, and then they wanted to be financially stable. And but that's I talked to a lot of my friends, and that's what it is for them too. Like, oh, so make sure we had a house first. We had to make sure that I was going to be able to have my job for at least a year so I can get, paid family leave, right? Which we can talk about the policy merits and demerits of that, but in New York State, that's a decision that a lot of people my age are making. I need to be in a job so I can get some money and take a few weeks off.
Yeah,
Well,
there was an
off.
interesting stat, and I don't know if it was in the Reason article or if I caught it in the Daily Star article, but they did some sort of average time spent with your kid calculation, and it's up something like
Oh yeah.
double from 1976. So our the actual one more reality that our parenting style in the last couple of decades has been complete
More intensive.
massive involvement and helicopter parenting, right? So
I mean, you can look at it that way, right? Like, again, the way like I look at it, right, is because time spent with kids has gone up especially for men, like way, way up for men. And plus, like for women too, like women, even in the generation where I grew up, they're spending more time with their kids. And so like what that looks like for me, for instance, my 2-year-old is I walk to daycare, I pick him up, I walk him back, we play on the playground for like 45 minutes, and then we make dinner, right?
yeah,
Because then he's worn out and he's ready to eat after
yeah,
that. And back in the old days, or whenever, right? Like you might go just pick up your kid, go home, do your thing, and then spend a few minutes with them. And it depends on different families have different things, but more people are doing something closer to what I do now than was happening 20, 30, 40 years ago.
I mean, back when I was a kid, when I was 2 years old, I was walking myself home from school, and like I had a part-time job, so it's definitely changed. You know what I mean? Like things are different now.
Yeah. And I want to throw this comment too. Childcare costs and medical costs. Childcare is expensive. Like I like the daycare I go to. It's great. They're doing good stuff, but they're about to drop another like 20% price increase on me. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, we're having trouble keeping our teachers. We want to offer a competitive wage because we want to keep them because they're good. So now I'm paying, like, no kidding, it's going to be close to like $350 a week.
For one child, that's
for one child for a week.
incredible.
So let's do the math on that. That's like $1,400 a month.
Yeah,
And then times that by two children, and you get a little bit of a discount, but not that much.
no, so you'd get close to 600, $700 a month for two kids. You're not
No,
gonna,
like a week.
yeah,
a
I'm sorry,
week.
right. So then
wish
you're
it was
gonna
that
get to
amount.
where you're not gonna have a second kid or a kid or a fourth kid until like you're gonna space them out 4 or 5 years, right? And then
Yeah,
pretty much you're
so
gonna
you
be
can
out of
afford
that
it,
age
and
range where
yeah,
kids look
and
interesting.
because if you imagine having like 3 kids in daycare, and you're paying that sort of price, at some point you got to think, okay, this is running up on $4,500 a month. A lot of people, they're like, well, I'm just going to drop out of the workforce. And a lot of people don't want to do that because they know that if they drop out of the workforce for a few years, it's tough to get restarted in it. Like it is what it is. And people are making that choice too. And again, we're just providing different incentives through doing this. And there's different stuff that's going up, some of which has good things associated with it, more women in the workforce, engaging with like society and whatnot. That's great. Engaging women, engaging in employment, but also, yeah, that people are having fewer kids, and that does have some negative effects. And which we're going to get to, and then there's, I mean, men can drop out of the workforce too, and I know folks who do and who have, for that same reason. But again, if it's that expensive to take care of kids on your own, and you're gonna have to take a hit to your long-term income because of that, it's a tough choice to make. So people just say, 1 or 2 is fine.
Well, we've certainly, as a culture, kind of de-emphasized the notion that a stay-at-home mom is where it's at, and I don't know if that's good or bad. Like that's because I'm not a stay-at-home mom, right? I have been pretty hands-on kind of dad though, and I can say like there was no interest like in me as a child that I've expressed in my children and spent time going to their sporting events and coaching their teams and just kind of trying to interact with their world a little bit. And it's just a massive shift in societal perception or societal behavior, I guess I should say.
Yeah. And a lot more time goes into that too. Like, I mean, you're spending time, going to your son's wrestling matches. That's a thing
Yeah.
that wasn't really so much a thing 100 years ago, right? And that's going to change how you view kids. Are you viewing them as a labor source? You need a bunch of them to keep the farm going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wish I had one. And a bunch of kids.
yeah,
Be the way to do it.
yeah. So I mean that's how it goes, and so yeah, there's all the stuff that goes into it. So New York State in particular makes it hard for average folks to like get by, for businesses to thrive, right? It's just a
Yeah.
thing.
Well, Social
And
Security, taking care of old people, taxes getting paid, tax burdens, properties being maintained and developed. There's workforce productivity issues. And guys, I'm as productive as a 15-year-old, but that I am the exception that probably proves the rule. Well, actually, a 15-year-old might not be the best example.
I was gonna say that. Like, have you ever worked with a 15-year-old man? Like,
Hang
I
on.
was not a great worker at 15. I
I'm
was
probably as productive as a 25-year-old.
there
But
you go.
I'm just saying, I'm probably the exception that proves the rule. So those things become real issues. I see things like if we pull up Patty's comment over here, she's been told by all four of her children that she's never going to be a grandmother, and I think that society's kind of lost that vibe, or it used to be. I think having kids used to be like the ultimate goal, and I don't think that people are seeing it that way anymore.
And I said, I have friends who see things this way, and they just say like, that's not for me. I mean, it's sometimes it's like really negative, like it's like kids are miserable and they're awful and they're going to ruin your life. Like there's some of that, right? But a lot of it's just like, well, I know that if I have kids, I won't have time to do all the other things I enjoy doing. I like having money and time, and I don't feel like I have the ability or interest in investing all that into having a child, which is, again, not something I can like disagree with or be mad about. Like it's probably better if people are making that choice. Like, yep, I'm gonna not be good at being a parent, so or I'm not interested, so I'm not gonna do that, and then put that on my kid. That's a responsible decision to make, and it's good that people are making those decisions, like on the micro level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
So yes, freedom is good. But there,
and because we're gonna get into that a little bit later. Like with some of these things, it's like, okay, how far are you willing to go to encourage people to have kids? If you're going anywhere beyond subsidies, and you start to chip away at bodily autonomy, yeah, that's a bad thing. That's not good.
yeah, and like, look, it's like not even the abortion issue. It's just like there's birth control issues, there's human rights issues, and even subsidies, Kevin, like they're wickedly dangerous, right? Like if you let's they're wickedly dangerous because of who ends up getting the subsidies, how that program itself can get abused, and like we have to have an open and honest conversation without pointing fingers and calling names. But if we subsidize people, people will just reproduce for a subsidy, right? Like, isn't
Right.
that a possibility? And isn't that something that we've seen? And guys, I was a child protective services worker, and I'm not saying it's profitable, and I'm not saying that it makes sense, but there are people that would just basically live their whole life participating in government programs, one program to the next. And so then we're basically perpetuating. How do we like? I don't even want to say undesirable, but we're perpetuating a segment of the population that is only responding to the incentive. And I think we
Right.
can see that there's possibly a negative outcome there. And I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right.
No. Yeah. Well, let me see if we can
dial
this
me
to
back from this crazy.
yeah, right. Well, because I think I understand what you're saying, and just like is it is it optimal for society to just say like we will give you an additional subsidy for having children? Is that the best situation for the kids in that situation? Is that the best situation for like communities who might be not well equipped to do that? The people who respond to those incentives, like who are most likely to respond to those incentives, are they going to be able to effectively care for their kids? That's a fair question. Again, you start to create these distortions where people aren't having kids because they've made personal decisions that make sense for them and their family and their situations that they can have more kids. You could end up exacerbating some problems, particularly in high poverty areas. It could happen, right? Like it's
Sure.
I could see how it could get to that. Um, again, and it's not any individual situation might be good or bad, and it's not exclusive to people who are low income, who are good or bad parents. Like that's not at all what I'm saying. But I get like that
Yeah,
incentive
yeah,
becomes
it's a
strange.
it's a tricky subject, right? And then the next one that I point at takes us right down another tricky subject road is where the family court system in New York, for guys feels particularly biased, gender biased. And so I think that guys would want to avoid participating in families, but that to me doesn't really solve the issue because what the problem with the family court system is that it's an adversarial process where whereby we have to have a winner and a loser, and someone has to
Yeah.
be the hero and someone has to be the goat. And we clog it up with needless fighting. And I if we came to better agreements, people would just have more kids. They would like it better. It would be more enjoyable.
Yeah.
I sound like a lunatic today, but I don't care.
That's how it goes. And I meant that I was trying to look these up while we were talking about the thing. Is like some of the other governments that subsidize children, like Singapore, $8,000 for a first baby or second baby, $10,000 for every child in your after, just straight up cash for
Yeah.
like having kids,
And-
like
but
or just subsidizing childcare. There's different things, which is something we get a lot of here, and I know that's like a debate that's happening among Democrats in New York. Oh, birth rates are real low. The reason why is childcare, and I mentioned the childcare. It's a legit thing. I do not think what you know. We're running out of time for this segment. I want to talk about subsidizing childcare, because I obviously have strong opinions because a lot of money's coming out of my bank account every week
Yeah.
for that. But is it a good idea to subsidize it? We'll see. All right,
We'll
thanks again for
see.
joining us here at On a Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right. She gets some of these comments for the internet show. I know active comment section today.
It's good. We're hitting
Yeah.
on a
And
sweet spot. People want to talk about this.
yeah. So and I know like there's some comments in here too about like abortions being calculated into that. The thing about like that in New York State in particular, like New York wasn't a sanctuary state for abortion until recently. Like a lot of states with higher birth rates had pretty liberal abortion laws. Like Florida until recently had a very liberal abortion law until like last year.
Right.
Actually, this year they just dropped it down to whatever 6 weeks. But before that, it was pretty close to what New York was at. Because they went they're 14 weeks, and then it was like way up there before. And let's see. So I think we upstate people should be having more children so that we actually get a vote.
Certainly, that's like our demographic. If we're the ones that are faced with, it's Otsego County in New York City though, so the birth rate issue is not just those are the two lowest birth rate counties. So it's not just upstate, but it is, I think that's kind of what I was pointing at, right? Like if it's extra expensive in upstate, we're going to have less kids and we're going to lose Democratic.
And a lot of people just leave too, right? It doesn't even matter if the birth rate is like holding steady or going up or down. I mean, it's the combination of people are leaving and the people who are staying are less optimistic about the future. And when you're less optimistic or you're concerned that your costs are going to be high, right?
Yeah,
Just
that.
calculating the cost of childcare and everything else that could go wrong. My son had some medical costs associated with him when he was born, and all right, if we have another, it could be expensive. Can we take the hit? Are we confident that everything's going to be okay to take that hit? That's a decision that has to get made. And Patricia says the world birth rate is declining across the board. People are more responsible in our choosing to wait. Yeah, I mean that's part of
Yeah.
it, and that's in part a product of the Industrial Revolution too. Like in agricultural societies, there's a huge advantage of having a lot of kids. You try to have more anyway because a lot of them, like a horrifying number, wouldn't make it to the age of 5.
Honestly,
Too.
that's a reality too, right? Like
Yeah,
that has to play a role in this conversation. Like birth rates, one of the reasons why it's 2.1 and not 2.7 is because we very successfully have improved our care of younger children.
yeah.
But it used to be a ridiculous number of kids. Never made it to.
Yeah, right. So if you wanted to make sure you had kids to take care of you, to take care of your property, etc., you gotta roll the dice. Okay, you have 6, 3 of them make it. Yeah, I mean it's grim, like, but
And
that's also part of it. And then
yes, I have an unnamed case, Kevin, back from when I was a child protective services worker, but a generational farm family who had moved into town, um, had 2 kids, and we had to go do an investigation because one of the kids said he got in trouble at home, and we had to go check things out, right? And we get to the house, and there's a kid in a crib, and we're like, well, who are you? And he's like, just chirps right up. I'm, let's say his name was Billy, and we're like, well, isn't his name Billy? And they're like, yeah, we're brothers. And it's like, okay. Uh, so
right on.
who's older? Oh, I'm older. It's like, okay, that's so awkward. And then so we got talking to him. I'm like, well, the first Billy seemed kind of sickly. So we had the second Billy just to kind of cover the bases. And it's like, and guys, I could have just made that story up. Let's just be honest. I'm not supposed to,
Yeah.
but at the very least, I can tell you that similar stories like that have in fact happened.
Yeah. No, that's that could happen, right? But you get the point though. People are more knowledgeable how it works too now, choosing the weight,
Sure.
but a lot of it is also that, right? It's so yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on here, and yeah, so I will
Shelley shares my disdain for the family court system. I do think I just want it to be less adversarial. I just want a presumption of shared custody. I just want it to be
right.
like, yes, there's a mom. Yes, there's a dad. Yes, there's 2 parents in this situation, and both parents will be honored. And because of the law and the way that it exists, makes it almost impossible. As long as the people make their agreement outside of the court and the court agrees to the agreement, it's fine.
Yeah.
But that can be very hard at those contentious moments. And I think the existence of some of the rules in family court contribute to those contentious moments.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's yeah, I've seen a little bit of this. It's better if people can make an agreement beforehand. You're not having some stranger who may have good intentions, but may also have biases making a decision about you and your family. And that could be tough. But again,
Yes.
if it's a contentious situation, yeah, that it doesn't always go maybe the way it should. So that's tough. As I don't know the individual cases, but that's tough. And this one more. It's Sure says you want a shocking statistic, look up mother maternity during birth rate in USA tensely high. It's funny, well, not funny. It's interesting because maternal death rate has gone down a whole bunch from like the 19th century, right? But in the last few years, it's been creeping up, particularly among African American women. Like it is actually a thing. It's starting to become like a serious concern. Still way down from what it was, say, like 60, 70 years ago, but up from like the 90s. And people are concerned about it.
As rightly so.
Yeah. All right. So we should get back. We'll get back at 30 minutes. Taking a nice long segment here. And we'll talk about we'll talk about some of the what did I say I was going to talk about at the end of the period.
See, we almost have to go back, and I can't remember, but we were right in the middle of something, and then we didn't cover it during the break, and I don't know what it is.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh man! I don't remember what it was. That's terrible. But
I'm trying to replay it in my brain, and it's not quite there. Because I had a feel you were on the precipice of an amazing point that was going to solve all the world's problems.
Probably not.
Oh well. Next show.
So wait. I was trying to think of what it was now. It's terrible. Well, anyway, I'm gonna now have to cut all this from that, but yeah, we'll just go back at 31. Sorry, radio audience. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. I think we've about covered everything that we could cover about declining birth rates. Again, we're
going to talk about some of the other policies associated, like the pronatalist policies. What could go wrong when we? Oh, I remember what guys we went on like. All right, for those of you listening on the radio, we talked for a while during the break, as we sometimes do on our Facebook Live, YouTube Live, etc. So if you are listening to this on the radio, you want to catch some of that stuff in between, make sure you listen to the podcast. We talk in between breaks, and we also talk after the show occasionally. I was going to talk about childcare subsidies. That's what I was going to talk about.
All right.
So childcare subsidies. This is sometimes proposed as a solution to low birth rates. Because again, I did state that as a thing that that the cost of childcare is extremely high, right. And it's having a couple kids that'll add up quick. And so one of the solutions is, we'll just subsidize childcare, right? And the thing about childcare, there's a reason why it's expensive, and a lot of that reason is regulation.
It is.
That said, some of the regulation isn't totally unreasonable. So like infant childcare is ridiculously expensive, but in part that's because of things like in New York State, it's like a OCFS, Office of Child and Family Services, say that you have to have one person for every 4 infants, right? Because you need to be able to like carry them out if there's a fire or an emergency. That's pretty reasonable, but you know, having to have one worker for every 4 kids isn't very scalable, so the costs are going to be like pretty expensive to pay for each of those, because you're only splitting it 4 ways instead of when you get the older kids, you can split it a lot more, unless you're running like an illegal operation, which you could get a bit cheaper. But if you want to pay a good wage for people and make sure that they're safe, yeah, it's going to be expensive to do it, right? The combination of both of those things is going to add up quick. So because we're not able to solve that, not unable, I think most people are unwilling, and I'm as libertarian as you get, and even me, I'm like, no, I'm actually okay with those ratios.
Yeah.
If we can't solve that, the next thing people jump to is, well, we'll just subsidize it, right? We'll just subsidize childcare. Now, Tim, do we have any examples of where maybe the government subsidized a key service like this, and maybe things got out of hand?
Well, practically every single time the government subsidizes something, we see a what would be the right word? A disproportionate explosion in the costs of that service. So if you can come up with $350 a week now to get your kid cared for, and the government goes and hands your daycare center a subsidy, they're still going to bank on you coming up with $350 a week and them spending the government subsidy. That's exactly how it works. It's how higher education works. It's how your local school works. When we subsidize, we distort the market. That's a reality. You know?
No, we do. We end up distorting the market a lot. And again, there are subsidies that exist, right? Like you can get subsidies in New York for childcare, and some centers will take them, some don't. It's a whole mixed bag. And then there's some that are have tighter relationships with the government, and some looser relationships with the government, and different like levels of subsidy. But yeah, it's already a thing. It's income based, and people just want to increase that, and they think if we increase it sufficiently, then people will make different choices, and the average will creep up a little bit. A few people who might have been on the margin of having kids might have one now
Right.
if we can subsidize it just a teeny bit more. But again, every time we do this, every time we deepen that relationship with government and uh, and end up distorting the cost of childcare, you end up creating a whole new set of problems. Particularly when you start to move towards like we'll just have like fully subsidized government childcare and inability to be able to I don't know address the deeper challenges with people unable to pay for childcare properly too, right? That's a thing. Um,
Yeah, it's a catch-22. It's a conundrum, and it's a hard area for pragmatic libertarians to discuss because we could see the market distortions as a problem, but we can see the regulations of having one care provider per every 4 infants as sensible. So, like, man,
I know. So this one's tough.
being a
Like
libertarian,
I
dude,
do. I
it's
do want. I did want to talk about it, but it's a tough one to deal with. And Patricia on Facebook says I moved back to New York from South Carolina because of the infant to adult ratio in daycare centers. Yeah, it might be a thing, right? It's
a rational reason, honestly.
yeah, and like in theory, right? You'd say like, well, the market should provide for that sort of thing, right? Like there should be someone who recognizes that need of wanting a smaller ratio and do it, but it doesn't always happen, and or there might not be anything close. That could be a tough thing. So again, I I don't have a great answer on this. My instinct is to be skeptical of subsidies, mostly because like I've seen how it distorts everything. It ends up ultimately raising prices for everyone. Like the subsidized price ends up becoming a floor, and pushing up costs dramatically, particularly if you because what ends up happening, right, is you end up with bloated administrative costs, which is what happens in healthcare and higher education in some cases, in that like you're always trying to comply with the new strings associated with the subsidy.
Right.
And so in doing so, you now balloon the administrative costs, and
Look,
you
yeah,
end up spending as much money chasing the extra dollars as you do providing actual care.
that's the big problems we see in education. There's, the
Not
administrative
everywhere, just the thing. It can happen.
it adds up. It crushes. It imposes a major burden. It
Yeah.
distorts the markets, and that's a reality. And that's boring, right? Like it's tough being a libertarian because when you say it distorts the markets, like everybody's brain shuts off. They're just like, oh my god, these
Yeah,
guys
whatever.
that, and they didn't even use the
Big.
word right. They don't know what that. I'm changing the channel, man. There's nothing sexy about this stuff. So.
Yeah.
So what's the answer, man? How do we sell this stuff? I don't know, but we can talk about other things besides this, Kevin. It's been a pretty exciting week.
All right. Yeah, no, I suppose so. We can move on if you insist.
Let's do it, man. Because here's the deal. Kevin and I generally have these big, huge blowouts about immigration, and here's the reality. We're going to put another one on the table for you guys right now. Kevin, we're being invaded at the southern border. 750,000 people unchecked, flown across the border, thanks to Title 42. It's starting tomorrow, or it started today. I don't even know. 30,000 immigrants got arrested in Texas.
Did they get arrested or they come across unchecked? Which is it?
It's hard to tell because we can, and that's a good way to start this conversation because the world gets caught up, mainstream media gets caught up in parroting narratives and smashing statistics together to freak people out. But I'm freaked out, Kevin. So I don't know. You answer it.
I answer. Yeah. What is interesting about the Biden administration is that they have at least a little bit recently done some things to try to make things a little bit clearer, but a little bit easier for some folks to get back in, and by easier I mean slightly less horrifyingly restrictive than the Trump administration, but way, more restrictive than say what Ronald Reagan had under his regime.
Reagan was pro-immigration, guys.
He was extremely pro-immigration, and there's not a single Democrat out there right now who is more pro-immigration than Ronald Reagan was, which is wild. Okay, I won't say not a single Democrat, but like the mainstream of the party is not more pro-immigration than Ronald Reagan was.
Right. So the argument is, and I think we see it borne out, and good. I welcome your pushback because I think we get in. This is an area where pragmatic libertarians and the rest of the world are at loggerheads. Okay, so Eric Adams is begging the federal government for more money. Kristen Sinema is saying that Arizona cannot withstand, and they use words like invasion, and I know that bothers you, and I'm glad that it bothers you because I think it's important to realize that we're talking about human beings, right? But she's saying we're being invaded at the southern border. Clay and Buck all day long, we're being invaded at the border. We're being invaded at the border. Even Glenn Beck traveling down that road of it's an invasion. And sure, they don't have guns, but like, so what's different now? Like, why are people so freaked out? Why is the mainstream media and guys, you guys all know the mainstream media lies all the time for clicks and bait and to get you upset. So expose their lies, Kevin.
Well, again, as Jerry stated, those are people. They're just trying to make a better lives for themselves, like my ancestors and many of the listeners' ancestors. They're making hard decisions and difficult choices to try to come here. It's very difficult to come here legally now. In fact, there are a lot of incentives to just try to cross the border and ask for asylum, because that's the way we've structured things, right?
Sure.
Our government has put people in a position where this is the most reasonable course of action. Policy ends up driving that behavior. If you don't want people crossing over in big numbers or sending their children over unattended or whatever, just make it simple for people to come in. And don't say, well, we have this system where you can just be hanging out in Mexico and wait for that. No, that's ridiculous. That's not where you ultimately want to go. You're gonna be hanging out in a temporary place for a long time with a country that doesn't have the infrastructure to handle them. Mexico doesn't. The United States does, and I know a lot of people don't think we do, but generally we do.
That's a big one too. We need the federal government to go into debt and build us infrastructure to care for immigrants coming across the border.
Infrastructure doesn't need to come from government. Like we have a massive economy. We could just let people work. We could let people come over here and just work and do their thing and get apartments and do it all legally instead of having to go here and get taken advantage of because they can't find anyone who's willing to hire them legally. They're paying taxes, but they're paying it under a fake social security number. They might be renting an apartment, but they might be doing it under an assumed name or with a sketchy landlord who knows they're an illegal immigrant and might overcharge them because they could just threaten to call the cops, threaten to call immigration services. This is in the same ways that the war on drugs creates distortions in black markets. So too do our immigration laws create negative and coercive relationships between people because of the threat of law enforcement.
So one of the coercive relationships that concerns me because we bring these people here in a quasi-legal status is sex trade and abusive policies where they get stuck in situations of dealing drugs and they have no way out. They have no recourse. And so they're fleeing tyranny and they come here. And guys, look, I'll even go as far as to say, and we've said it before, the war on drugs. And guys, that RFK Jr. even said it.
I was wondering if you're going to bring him up.
I've been wanting to work him into conversation, Kevin, so bad. But even he said, guys, even he admits that the war on drugs creates this chaos, right? That empowers these thugs who are effective at running illegal substances into our country. So we've destroyed economies. people are coming here. We have an opportunity to be decent human beings just through freedom. And instead of freedom, we give them a coercive relationship where they have quasi-legal status and they're constantly under threat. And it empowers bad people to use them for bad things.
Yeah.
That's
And-
it, man.
And that's the and I know a lot of people criticize cities like Rochester for being an amnesty city, but like that sort of thinking is kind of why Rochester did, and I actually thought it made sense because they wanted like people who were of maybe questionable immigration status to be able to go to the police when something went wrong, right? Like, hey, you know, I saw my neighbor kill a guy. Like, you don't want that person to not help bring a killer to justice because they're worried that if they talk to the cops, they're going to just get deported and their family's going to get sent back to a country maybe they've never even been in their adult life, right?
Right.
You don't want that. So we create all these incentives where problems can go unsolved, where people can get exploited, where people aren't able to truly build their lives and build wealth because of government policy. And again, it's why are all these things happening? It's because someone chose to do that. Why do we have problems with massive amounts of people occasionally coming over? Why do we have issues with illegal immigration? We have problems with illegal immigration because we chose to make a lot of immigration illegal. Like is a government decision. It's a political decision. We don't have to do that.
It is one of the areas where regularly the left and the right virtue signal, right? The right virtue signals on safety and equity and taking your jobs, right? And the left virtue signals on compassion and kindness. And it's almost a perfect example of how they paint two different pictures but behave exactly the freaking same. And they use human being as tools for votes. And that to me is offensive, right? Like, and it's just offensive. It's more than offensive, right? It's dangerous. If we don't wake up and see what they're doing, they're going to continue doing it and they're going to continue dividing us.
Well, on that note, though, we are up for a break. Thanks again for joining us here on WYSL and on our live stream. Appreciate y'all being here. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right, Timmy, you know what we didn't talk about with the birth rates thing? We didn't talk about the Ponzi scheme.
I mentioned it a couple times. We never kind of broke it down as this, like Social Security is going to fall upon crumble upon itself if we don't have.
The only way we can keep the Social Security scheme rolling and all the like old age pension systems rolling is if we have young people to feed it.
Yeah.
Now
we didn't deal with it specifically, but it was there. It was part of our conversation, right, guys? I think it was.
I don't know if we talked about it on the radio spot.
Oh, that could be. Guys, I'm an ordained minister, so I forgot to. Maybe I should say that for the regular show. But I'm looking for a name for my ministry, so I don't know. Like, I'm taking all sorts of suggestions. I mean, the Church of Liberty makes sense, right? But almost that's too straightforward.
Too on the nose.
Yeah, too straight. Yeah, too straightforward. Too something.
All right. Well, what are we going to talk about the last segment then?
Well, I have some strange sent in by Patricia Blanchard. I have some strange driving laws that if people are going to be traveling, and even if they're not, we could go over a few of them because 3 or 4 of them are like the first couple, 3, 4 are really funny. I didn't get to go through the whole list, but I got a couple good ones to start us off.
Wow.
And then maybe we could make a joke about Trump. I'll probably make a joke about Trump. Tucker is going to Twitter. Did you hear that?
No.
Okay.
I did not hear it.
Good.
We'll talk about that.
Tucker, and so maybe we should save some of this for the show, but we'll do a quick little. I'll do a little extemporaneous lecture on Tucker when we first get back about what he's up to.
Oh goodness! Well, we're all going to be very excited for that.
We are. And actually, I'm going to compliment you and I, and thank Tucker for finally waking up.
All right. Well, we'll see. Well, I guess we'll head back and I don't know, 15 seconds, and we'll go from there. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. And guys, Tucker has been all over the news lately with his firing from Fox and his finally he kind of came down to brass tacks. And look, I am going to reach out to Tucker, and I just want to thank him personally for finally catching up to what Kevin and I have been saying about the mainstream media for 2 years now. And I've been saying it for longer, and probably Kevin's been saying it for longer. But together on this show, we've been explaining to you that the mainstream media lies constantly. And they lie through the sins of omission. They lie to get your emotions in an uproar. They phrase things to mess with you. And Tucker released, Kevin, this is the problem, man. He's so popular. He had like 3 million views in 27 minutes for his 3-minute bit that he released on Twitter. But he's taking like the Tucker Carlson show to Twitter, and they're going to do like a live hour feed or something. Details are yet to be announced, but so compliments and kudos to Tucker for finally catching up to where I've been for years.
I'm about to say, I'm impressed that he's copying us. Like, good for him.
Honestly, I swear to God, he's been watching our show with some of the things that he said on his little 3-minute blurb. I am not kidding you. It was just he hit all the high points of media manipulation that you and I talk about regularly, because almost every major inflammatory news story includes some elements of media manipulation. And Tucker, as far as I'm concerned, Tucker was guilty of doing it, and I think he's now wait, that I don't even mean to parse that. Tucker was as guilty of doing it as anybody else. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And even though I liked what he had to say better, and I thought occasionally he spun closer to the truth, he definitely spun.
Right. All right. Well, it is interesting and exciting to see people break out of like mainstream news networks and news organizations to try to chart a more independent path. It's like, so just like backing up, and they're like, okay, Tucker's doing this thing, and maybe he's going to do that, and he's going to find a way to monetize it, and he's going to be happy. His followers are going to be happy. Elon Musk's going to be happy. They're going to make money off of it somehow. Cool. All right. Do your thing. But people have been doing that for a little while with things like Substack, Patreon, and other things as well. Like, and doing a subscriber based model where people are just paying directly for the content.
Right.
And instead of having, something closer to like what we do, where like the ads help kind of pay for like the station, to be able to put out the content. And so it's interesting to see that shift, and whether or not that's going to be a good thing, a positive development, a better model for people who want to speak their minds. I don't know. You're beholden to in some ways a crowd of people, your fans, which can be good and bad. You're accountable, but also like beholden. There's a lot of incentive to say what people want to hear rather than, maybe a harder to swallow truth, which is what Tucker's been accused of.
Right. Well, I'm
maybe rightly or wrongly,
as a structured kind of show where they actually sell some advertising, just like they do on the mainstream media networks, so that perhaps he doesn't go to the direct subscriber model, but does continue to sell advertising. So
he could do
but
that.
Yes, that's actually your point, isn't it? That then you're really beholden to the powers that be that are paying for the advertising.
A little bit of both. And again, I'm a big believer in digital advertising. I think like live programming like that, like to me, like as not his specific show, but like, okay, if I could do dynamic ad insertion and I can go after the audiences I want who cross over with his audience, right? Like they intend to buy this product and also interested in this, and I'm willing to bid a certain amount to be on that show, to be in front of those people. You don't have to sell some could be single spots that get seen by everyone, but you can also just insert the spots that you need, which TV stations could do a little bit of that, but just not in as targeted of a way as what you could do in a place like Twitter or some connected TV products. I mean, I'm getting to my job now, but that's
Right.
hey, that's a thing though. Like so it might be a new interesting model of this is how we do it. This is how we stream. This is how people like Tucker make their money.
And once again, I'd like to thank our sponsor, MK Ultra, the smoothest beer.
Still drinking those, huh?
Still drinking the MK Ultras. I'm committed. It's the greatest beer of all time.
Is it because they make you see funny colors, or?
No. I mean, I'm not sure I would know the difference. It's just a good beer. It's a good beer to sip on when I'm talking politics.
God. That's still a thing. Anyway, so enough about Tucker. What else are we gonna talk about? I know you had a bunch of stuff that you want to talk about.
All right. Well, I did have a bunch of stuff. So, like, look, Trump lost his case. He's not going to jail. He's got to pay $5 million. He is, by the preponderance of the evidence, which means, not beyond a shadow of a doubt, but he is culpable, liable for damages in a sex abuse and defamation of character case. Obviously he's going to appeal it somehow or continue to fight it. It feels politicized to me. And I've never liked civil litigation because of that preponderance of evidence, but I understand it, it's just, I don't know. Anyway, so there's that. Trump, Biden might in fact declare the debt ceiling unconstitutional to eliminate, just keeping it on the back burner.
It doesn't matter.
So according
why didn't anyone else think of that? Perfect. Executive authority. It's awesome.
According to the 14th Amendment, he can just executively declare.
Is that what that says? I gotta pull it out again. I don't remember.
Kevin, there's one or two legal scholars already on this case, mouthpiecing for the administration. That's not how
they hang out in the YouTube comment section.
Yeah.
And
that's not how they put it in the article I read, but that's basically it. That he can just declare unconstitutional.
No offense to the folks who are in our YouTube comment section, by the way. You guys are great, Shelly and Patricia.
Yeah, absolutely.
and John, if he's still on here. But I haven't read that yet, but I'm skeptical.
So the issue is he could declare it unconstitutional, and then that would have to, I think, then be argued out in court. I don't know, because I don't think the president has any ability to declare things that have been duly legislated unconstitutional, but that won't necessarily stop him, right? Like,
yeah, it hasn't before. He's done that a few times. He did it with some of the COVID stuff too, where he's just like, well, maybe it's constitutional, but we're gonna try to get through anyway.
We're gonna go ahead and do it.
And
more importantly, though, Kevin, I don't want to beleaguer us with this. I have important rules of the road. If you guys are going to be out there traveling, and some of them are really important. Like if you're going to be driving through Alabama sometime this summer, it would be important to note that you cannot drive with a blindfold on. It's important to know.
All right. Well, that's an activity I thought I was going to do. It's too bad. Tim, do you support this law?
Well, basically, once self-driving cars are a thing, this law will be obsolete.
Is it still? Are you still going to get pulled over for it though?
Well, in Alabama, I imagine, based on what I see on TikTok, police need to pull you over for revenue, and therefore they will pull you over if you are in fact.
Is it gonna be like, so if you're in like a self-driving car, like actual self-driving car, not like the Teslas and what they have now, which are technically it's not self-driving, it's like assisted, right? Like actual self-driving cars, and you're like, I'm gonna take a nap, I'm gonna put as one of those covers on my eyes. Can the police pull you over for that?
Honestly, if I know it's illegal, it actually increases the likelihood of me doing it.
You're definitely going to do it.
Yeah. So also in Alabama, driving the wrong way down a one-way road, we can see that this makes sense, right? Is illegal and it makes sense, right?
Reasonable.
But in Alabama, it is permissible if you attach a lantern to the front of your car. Um,
A
so
lanyard?
a lantern,
A
so that
lantern. All
you
right.
can
So people.
people can know, like they can see the bright light heading in their direction. I think it specifically has to be a lantern, though. It
Man,
can't
can't you
just be a
just use one of
headlight.
those blinding headlights that they have on the trucks that follow too close to me? Like, it just
Yeah, yeah.
is it
No, it's
not
got
the
to be
same
an
thing?
official lantern, apparently.
Does the state sell them?
You're probably right. And this is one that's come up off and on, and this this one actually kind of makes sense, right? But if you're driving in Anchorage, Alaska, you are not allowed to carry your dog in the back of a pickup truck without putting that dog in a carrier or using a tether. That one makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
dogs can just, you know,
Sure, good with that. I think we talked about this one in like Florida at one point in time too.
yeah,
There's a thing because there's like two sets of laws that the sets of laws related to dogs that were coming out. One was like you couldn't let them hang their heads out the window, which was ridiculous. Like you should be able to do that. But
right,
the other one was like you can't have your dog unsecured in the back of a truck, and that one I'm like yeah, like
yeah, it
that's
made
it's
sense.
yeah, even if it weren't illegal, that would be a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. Um, you shouldn't have dogs in the back of your truck, and you shouldn't have people in the back of the truck either. Not that I haven't done that at one point in time, and I'm sure many people have. Like, all right, we're just going half a mile down the road. Everyone get in, but you shouldn't do that. It's not smart. But Tim's like, no, I've never done that in my life. Never
I,
ever.
I, I. First of all, dogs are precious, right? And
Yeah.
like all they do is
Not
give you
not the
love.
dog. I meant people get in the back of the
Oh,
truck. But
people, no, you would, yeah, whatever.
yeah, no,
I
I would.
am I
I have
being
ridden in the back
detained?
of the truck several times. I would not let my dog do that.
Am I being detained, Kevin?
Yeah, because my
I don't.
dog, like I love him, my sweet black lab, but like the moment he sees a deer or rabbit, he tries to jump out the window. Like he tries to
Yeah.
like, and if he were in the back of a truck, he'd just
Yep.
pull over. He just no self control at all.
It- Dogs sometimes have zero impulse control, whereas when you're driving with your kids in the truck, you hope that they're not going to go chase a rabbit. Let's be honest.
Yeah, you'd think so, but no. People in the back of the truck also shouldn't do that. Also illegal in most places because you're supposed to have a seatbelt, but I have
Not in
done that for
Hawaii,
sure.
Kevin. Just so
Not in
you
Hawaii,
know.
you can just
Not in Hawaii. It is completely legal that passengers riding in a cargo box. It's completely legal. All they have to do is to be at least 12 years old, and all of the seats in the cabin need to be occupied. So
okay. So you can't choose to sit back there just because you want to. It has to be like there's
no,
no other room. Well, all right.
you
That's
can't have
fine
no
with
empty
me.
seats in the front of the truck. But it,
Yeah.
if they are all full, you can load up the back. No
Yeah. See,
problem.
I generally like agree with that. Again, it might not be smart, but also I don't know that it should be illegal in most cases, right? Except for like maybe for like young kids, right? And it's 12 years old, you said, right?
Right.
So
Correct. Yeah. They have an age range on it.
yeah, I think that's fairly reasonable. I accept that again. Still doesn't make smart, but I don't think it should be illegal. I don't think anyone should be shaken down or go to jail over that.
I
Or
think
seatbelt laws generally. Again, you should wear your seatbelt. Should there be a law against it for adults? They're
arguably,
choosing to.
someday I've always wanted to have that debate with about seatbelt laws and whether, like, there's this blanket statistic that seatbelts save 15,000 lives a year, and I'm like, I'm not sure that that's true. I think that if we were to examine the statistics, we could get into where technological advancement in car handling, safety, and impact zones has probably done more than the seatbelt. And,
Yeah.
and moms against whoever and seatbelt
Oh,
wearing
oh.
would probably fry me for it, but I
Actually,
think they're fine.
so we don't have time for this on the show here on WYSL, but I do have a thing related to car seats and birth rates too. But we're gonna have to save that for the bonus section. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We are running out of time for the day. thanks so much for joining us. If you want to keep listening on the show, make sure you follow our podcast or follow us on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, wherever. Follow us all the places if you want to catch the full show. Thanks again. Have a great night, folks. Take care. Yeah. There's a so real quick on the car seats thing. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but there's a episode of Freakonomics that talks about like car seats and has a section about the birth rates, and they think that because you are required to have an expensive car seat and have it for longer now in most states, right? And like you have to have like a backwards facing car seat and you have to be in that for so long, and then a booster seat that takes up a lot of space in a vehicle and have that for so long. Because of that, you can't really fit three car seats, three booster seats in the back of like a relatively small vehicle. You have to get a bigger vehicle. And that there are some families, because of that, because they don't want to get a newer or a bigger vehicle, they say, we'll just keep it at 2, because that's all the car seats we can fit. Now, is it everyone making that decision? Are they going to say that's the reason they made that decision? No, not necessarily. But because you can't really fit 3 booster seats in order to be compliant with the law in the back of most cars, and you can't put them in the front seat, there's some families are like, no, let's just leave it at 2.
Boy, that
car seat laws might be causing a decline in birth rates.
That makes sense. Oh, I did have a, and it actually does make a lot of sense. I feel like we talked about that one once before.
We did once.
Okay.
And also there's a whole thing in there too about how a lot of car seats, the data on them is really sketchy.
Yeah.
And like, so relative to car seats versus like, let's say like a 5-year-old, a booster seat's really more the case, sitting in a seat and having a seatbelt just adjusted slightly. There's not really any good data to prove that that's actually any safer.
I think that statistics are used to bolster a narrative, and regardless of what the truth is, sometimes we just get lost there. My Bud Light mascot Ella is having a fit. Must be my wife got home from work. So I did have I have good news, guys, about the Bermuda Triangle. Perhaps some of you have been noticing people are really curious. Like, we've never really solved the issue of the Bermuda Triangle, and why do planes and trains and buses all just go there? And
ocean trains?
Yeah.
Ocean buses?
Apparently, and guys, I don't know, like, am I crazy? But I feel like I always thought this, but a scientist says he has solved the Bermuda Triangle just like that. And he said there is no statistical anomaly associated with the Bermuda Triangle. There is no such occurrence of planes and ships disappearing at any rate other than what is exactly normal for the travel through the area. That's kind of boring, isn't it? I'm actually.
The answer is like, this is all fake news.
That's all fake news. Every single time we've seen something about like ships disappearing and moving forward in time because they went through the Bermuda Triangle, it's all been fake news, Kevin. All of it.
Yeah. Well, it's like the boring statistical answer is like, well, there's a lot of ships traveling through there, so of course a lot are going to disappear because there's more going through there than going through the empty, boring parts of the ocean where no one's traveling to, right?
Well, this is an Australian scientist saying it this time, Kevin. So now it must be true. I mean, this was just news from May 9th. Like,
I've seen other stuff where it's like it's actually rogue waves. You get a bunch of those, just like weird stuff happening there because of like hurricanes and big storms that pop up out of nowhere there, and then you get this 80-foot tall wave, and you're in a boat that can't handle that, and boom, you're over.
That would be incredibly awkward. I'll be honest with you. That's why I don't even. I mean, I barely can get in my car. It's just a disaster waiting.
Wouldn't want to do an 80-foot wave.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't. None of it. None of it.
No.
So that was good news. I felt like Di-Fi coming back to the Senate. That's good news.
Is she though?
Is it good news? I don't know.
No, that's
I mean, I don't know. Like, what in the world is going on? Like, I don't know.
yeah. Well, yeah, no, with her, I think we talked about this briefly. Like, she's sad. She's maybe not totally there. It seems a bit strange the way her staff is treating her. Like, she might not be fully capable of like participating in the Senate as we would expect someone in that position to do. And that's a tough position. It kind of seems like maybe they should ask her to retire, but she doesn't seem to want to, and her staff doesn't seem to want to, and everyone's too polite to do anything about it.
That could be. That's most likely it. I mean, it wasn't Strom Thurmond. Who was the guy? Was it Strom that basically just used to go and it wasn't that long ago. Like he was like 90 years old and he was just sleeping in his chair at the Senate. Wake him up for a vote.
Now, real gerontocracy stuff.
I'm paying attention.
Yeah, right.
Like, oh my God, you're not. Guys, good news again. We've got more good news out there. We didn't get to cover a lot of the really good news on the show. It is, guys, the shoe that you've all been waiting for. The Hunter Biden shoe is about to drop. They have got him this time.
Do they now?
Do they though? I mean,
who's got him?
Sean Hannity and Jim Jordan. That's all I know. I listened to 5 minutes of Sean Hannity, and it's like, here we go again. We got him this time. We really got him. Don't give out the news till after Wednesday because I've got some stuff. Like I don't even know who has the stuff, who has the goods. I don't know. There is a possibility of some. There is a distinct possibility of sometime this week. A higher possibility than at other times when they've made this promise that they are going to file some formal charges about tax evasion. Perhaps
this time it will. And I know there's also a chance that next week we could reveal information about Hunter Biden's imminent arrest. You won't know until you watch the show.
Almost certainly.
It could happen.
Almost.
I'm saying it will. I'm just saying that it could.
It's almost certain that it will happen. It's almost certain. That's what I want to say. It's almost certain that we will be talking about Hunter Biden again in the future. And guys, if I'm wrong, I won't even feel bad. I want to be very clear about that because this dog and pony show has been going on forever. I think what he did was corrupt. They got him on. They're going to get him on lying on a permit for a pistol because he obviously uses drugs, which they have recorded on the laptop. And he then filled out a pistol permit.
Can't show everyone that you've used drugs and then say on a federal forum that you don't use drugs. That's
it's a felony, Kevin. You don't have the right to lie. It's like lying to the FBI. You can't lie to the FBI.
Yeah, I always feel funny about these process crimes, but it is a crime. Whether or not it should be is a different discussion.
If we don't respect the process, Kevin, we've got nothing. It's anarchy, man.
Still, don't tempt me with a good time.
David Hogg is like, the Republicans aren't the party of law and order. They're the party of anarchy. And like 87,000 libertarians go, we wish.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about, man.
We wish. Yeah. All right. So, the one item I was going to bring to this discussion was probably too spicy for radio anyway.
Good.
Perfect. So real news or fake news? penis-shaped iceberg found in Conception Bay off the coast of Dildo, Newfoundland.
That was a mouthful. Say that again.
Penis-shaped iceberg found in Conception Bay off the coast of Dildo, Newfoundland.
I mean, honestly,
That,
there's a lot of work went into that. It's got to be real, man. That's got to be true.
Weirdly enough, yeah, that's a real story. That's a thing. I will share the link to it. And actually, I'll just share my screen here. There it is.
Well, congratulations, buddy. That guy's
Yeah, no, what a find. What a find. Just that's the most inspiring news that I saw all week. And I was like, you know what? My audience needs to
miracles happen every day. All right. Honestly, though, like in a sense, that's really cool. I don't know that it actually looks like a penis to me, but like I don't look at a lot of penises, I guess. All right. Oh, I didn't see the other parts there. No,
Yeah.
okay.
No, it's a whole thing. Just the whole thing, the town name, Conception Bay.
That's amazing, actually.
Dildo, Newfoundland. Just one, sometimes everything comes together.
Oh, I see what you did there.
But I don't know. It's just that was like, all right, cool. If we do fake news, that's bad. But this is the weird bonus part of the show. That was too spicy for radio anyway.
It was a little spicy, yeah.
But all right. So on that note, though, probably time to call it a night.
It probably is.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again for joining us, folks. Have a good night. Take care.